Is everybody ready? We're recording? All right, good evening, everybody. No, that's don't be sorry. Just wanted to get everybody's attention. Welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. We have a fairly aggressive agenda with executive and public safety, and typically we get a lot of questions, so I know our chiefs are ready to answer all those. So I think just in the interest of time, also before we started, I did want to thank Colin for the last couple of weeks. I wasn't able to attend the meeting, so thank you for chairing the meetings.
You're welcome.
Well, with that, why don't we turn it over to approval of minutes for December 6th? Any changes? Any thoughts? John, go ahead. You want here.
Yeah, on page one, I added a little thing about a mistake I'd made in the budget, and I was corrected by Kim, and and I agreed that she never corrected me, so so that's one.
So is there a suggestion on the wording? Is that where you're...
Just drop the whole thing, just...
The sentence?
Huh? No, drop that she corrected me.
Okay.
But, and the other just are typos on page 4, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down. Town is TOWN. And one more. On page 6, down in planning and zoning, the second paragraph, it's from and not form, but so those are the only corrections I have.
I have some thoughts on it, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
On page 1, Lindsay is considered present and she was absent last week, so we should make that correction. On page 2, if I could, and I'm happy, depending on how you want to handle this, to just provide you with the language, but I wanted to make a modification to the motion, the first motion regarding Select Board forming a committee. I'm going to read what I think it should say, and then I don't know who has this. Lando, Kim, I can give it to you. So to request BB to get the Select Board's input on forming a committee or otherwise gain public input on sidewalks and other areas of the master plan not represented by other committees. So, and again, I'll give you those wordings if you wish. On page 3, the third line down, I wanted to modify his intention was to reduce the selectmen budget, and I want to read you what I read. I appreciate that you can't capture all the words, but I think that the words I read are more hopeful than they are intention-wise. So what I prefer, I delete his intention was to reduce the selectmen's budget by 2% and change that to say he hoped the various approaches to the budget analysis he outlined can reduce the general fund budget by up to 2% without materially changing any risk. Okay? In that same paragraph where in the last...
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Was that, we'd have to go back to the video.
I actually read it on the video.
That was the word for word
yeah,
that you said?
That's correct, yep.
All right.
Yep. And I have it here if you want to read
Yeah,
it.
no. I just wanted to make sure.
The last sentence in the first paragraph, he also would like to recommend the Selectmen form a committee to look at revenue and what type of revenue cost growth. What I would do is delete will be seen and say we might forecast in the future as an example from the zoning changes. So it's really more about the forecasting capability on cost and revenue and making sure that we understand what decisions we're making today, how that impacts the future. And that would be, I think, meaningful as we think about the tax implications. Down at the bottom of that page, second to last paragraph, fiscal year 2025 operating expenses approximately $65,000. I don't think that can be correct. It just doesn't sound right. The budget is like $700,000. The fiscal operating budget wouldn't be $65,000. So I don't know whether that's.
I think that was the balance of the reserve, is what she.
Okay, so that might be the case. So that wording, I think, needs to be validated.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. In the last paragraph, my name is spelled wrong. No, it's okay. John, I'm disappointed. And in the page 5 at the bottom, one of the action items that I asked was to show equipment and vehicle maintenance, not just equipment lines. And I think that is all. Chris, I do have further discussions on the library budget. We can either do it now or during the other business section. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I think just one,
Yep.
before we get to that, just on the minutes, given the number of changes, does anybody else have changes or requests? Because I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, just given the number of requests for the specifics on language, we'd want to see another copy before we approve it. I mean, I'd ask the other committee
I'm
members.
fine with that.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lynn, do you want me to give you the words? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll catch up with you afterwards.
Just to make sure it's captured.
No, it's fine, yep.
I think for library, I'm conscious of what we have to cover tonight. If we have a chance, if we do get through emergency management and we can certainly bring it up before we get to other business, because, I mean, I'm not sure what other business we have. But if not, I know we have other meetings where we can, we have a couple of meetings built in. I'm cautious of knowing in the past how much time it's taken to get through police dispatch and fire, that it's going to be a long night. Or at least if we're going to go 2 hours. So if you're okay with it.
No, I am. I just, the library, Crystal said she's gone after January 5th, so I just want to raise a couple other questions that we should get to her, and we're going to have to schedule her to come back.
Yeah, were you going to send her questions in advance?
I can, but I want the committee here to hear the questions in
Right,
advance.
but I think, is that what was said at the last meeting? That you did ask her
Yes.
if you could ask more
That's a good point.
questions?
Yep, yep. And then some of the action items that come out, some of the action items I think are important to our ongoing analysis and our decision process, so that information needs to be made available in advance of our final meeting. So we can go through that too in other business if you want.
Okay. Why don't we, so we've agreed to defer the meeting minutes till next meeting, at least voting on those until we see a change in language. Why don't we go to the Selectmen's report?
Really busy. Oh, sorry, Will. For the winter gathering, we're going to start off with a report from, is this in the right order that we determined in the municipal matters? It is. Okay. So first off, Tony DeLunzio from Colliers will be there to just give an update on what he's done so far for the police station project. Chief Cobb will also talk about our successful Halloween event this year. Kim will talk about the wage survey and the status of the reclassification following the results of the wage survey. Jay's going to talk about the new fire truck. Adam's going to be there to talk about the potential zoning amendments that will be coming up, but just so everybody knows, there is a public hearing that's scheduled for January 9th for those zoning amendments as well. The selectmen are gonna give an update on the status of the water precinct. The water precinct folks won't be there Friday morning, but we will be giving an update following whatever happens tomorrow night at our meeting. We will talk about the sidewalks and forming the committee. And then I'm giving an update on where we are so far with the 2025 budget, and talk a little bit about the education funding lawsuit. And then we're leaving at the end to talk about the new property values. And we're hoping in the municipal matters, where we posted a lot of questions that have been coming in to the assessors and to the tax collector on the new tax bills. We're hoping that the municipal matters have addressed a lot of people's questions, but if not, we will be prepared on Friday morning to answer anybody's questions on the new tax bill. So that's what we've got for Friday. It's busy. It'll be a busy morning.
Thanks, Bibi. Any questions? John?
What and when is the corridor study, and when is that going to be completed, and how is that going to affect sidewalks?
I think 2026, Adams can address that.
So right now, it's in the CIP for fiscal year +26. Obviously, we don't know how that'll affect sidewalks until the study is completed. And that's a much more, as we talked about last week, a much more comprehensive process than solely sidewalks.
So is that going to interfere with the replacement of sidewalks after this water precinct thing?
So the water precinct will not impact all of the sidewalks. The main should be within the road, and then obviously there will be connections to the sides. So they will certainly touch pieces of them, but it's not something that will get completely redone, to my understanding. Bob, is that correct? The water precincts work on the sidewalks. It's not going to actually resurface the entire sidewalk. It will just be if they need to cut into a piece of it for a property's connection to the new main.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have sort of it's more related to Kim, and as I go through the pages here and I look at the wages, on the executive, you talk about a 2.5% step, no COLA. And then when you go through the town clerk, it says anticipated step in COLA. And when you go through finance, it's step in COLA. So I'm not sure if all these numbers are equal to each other or on our worksheet, yeah.
Right, so Lynn, you can explain it, but Lynn she anticipates that everyone will get a step. She did not include a COLA because we don't know what the COLA is yet. So if you look at the bottom, there's $150,000 in the Selectmen, the executive section salary and wage study. That $150,000 is slated to be COLAs and changes that the Selectmen approve related to the wage study.
But, okay, just very quickly, at the top of some of these sheets, some said that in your case, it didn't include COLA. Town clerk had said the anticipated step in COLA. Finance said step in COLA. So
You're talking the narrative, what the person put in,
yeah, so it just, are these numbers all?
These numbers are all consistent with somebody's salary and a 2.5% step, assuming they're not already at the top of their,
There's no COLA in them?
no COLA.
Anywhere?
Because the Selectmen have not decided
Okay.
what it is yet.
Good, thank you.
No worries. All right. Any other questions for Bibi? No? All right. With that, we'll move on to a review of the executive budget. Turn it over to Kim.
Okay. We have a minus 4% result there, so that's good news, right? Made up mostly because of the wage study. That was $200,000 in this current budget. The Selectmen are now, as I just mentioned, put in $150,000, so there's a $50,000 deduction right there. That $150,000 is for COLAs and for changes in salaries that result from the wage study. Other changes, there's an increase to the moderator's salary that both Will and I believe is important for the work that Michael Todd does. During elections, there's more and more work for the moderator to do. So I recommended an increase there. Printing and advertising's up. I think that's a result of both trying to keep citizens informed about what we're doing and rising costs in those areas. And the Selectmen's discretionary account, which they consistently overexpend, is being recommended to change from $2,500 to $5,000. Any other questions?
Any questions for Kim?
Just on the worksheet, it says $4,000 for the moderators.
Right, 4,000. In my narrative, I recommended 5,000, but the Selectmen recommended 4,000.
Okay, so 4 is what it is.
Yeah, that's what should be. These numbers here may differ from what's in narratives because the Selectmen didn't go along with all of the recommendations put in there.
Any other questions for Kim?
I have several.
Of course.
Several?
Kim, the 150,000, so I understand from Adam, and I think Adam mentioned his and the other person's, there was 2 positions that were recommended to be adjusted as a result of the salary study, and they were adjusted in the sheets. So the 150,000 would not be necessary for those adjustments. Are other adjustments underway?
Well, what's in these sheets brings them just to the, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, to the right grade, right? They are not yet at the 75th percentile. So say for Adam, for example, he went up to 1 grade. So he is at the bottom of the
Okay, so it was a
step
grade
1.
adjustment in the sheet, and then you had to...
Right. So
okay,
now the
okay.
Selectmen will make decisions on, and there are going to be others that change grades potentially if the Selectmen decide. I'm sorry. Grades also. We may have some grade changes, and there will be some step changes.
Grade changes outside of the study's recommendations?
Yeah, the Selectmen can look at there'll be other discussions on some other positions that they were not recommended, and that's what Carol talked about. Carol said, Grandfield from MRI suggested the recommendations that she put in were not the only ones, and so the idea is that the Selectmen, based on information from department heads and me, may make some other changes. So that 150,000 should be enough. We may spend a little less, a little more, but that's what they're estimating.
Okay. Is there any reason, if the Select Board is forever overspending the discretionary account, why we continue to underestimate it?
It's a good question. It's an account that's used for things that they don't expect. For example, appraisals of land, the summer and winter gatherings, there's an expense to those. So these are things that they haven't actually planned on. And I think most municipal budgets have those kinds of accounts where it's just things that you want to do that we didn't really budget anywhere else.
No, I think it's a good idea to have it. I'm just asking, to do budget against actuals, it would seem to me that actuals would suggest the budget should be higher next year, if you want to be
Right.
accurate in the budgeting process.
I
I
think
assume
the
there's a
Selectmen felt-
forecast of, they're unanticipated, but they must be constantly unanticipated things that we could take a look at to say, are they going to repeat themselves?
I
So
think
I
the Selectmen
was-
were trying to keep it as low as possible, recognizing that they have overexpended. But
Where does the 40,000 for the police station consultant coming from this year?
they haven't, well, they originally said that it would come out of the operating budget. They may change their mind on that. It could come out of ARPA funds, so.
I don't know. what that
They
means.
initially said that it would come out of the operating budget, and it might.
Somewhere someone in one of these lines?
Yeah,
And which line would that be?
I don't know yet.
You must have recommendations. They're going to ask you for recommendations, aren't they?
Once they finally decide where it's going to come from. Now,
Right.
again, they may switch it over to ARPA funds.
And the Jones and Beach consulting
That-
fees, where'd that
that's-
come from?
Discretionary account. So those kinds of studies have come out of there. I think we had an appraisal at one point that came out of there. So
So
those
where
are
is
the
the-
kinds of things, so that when they decide to do a study during the budget year, it would likely come out of there. I think we did a safety study of the town office a few years ago, and I want to say that was maybe 5,000, it came out of there. Christmas party, the Christmas luncheon, I think that was usually about the only thing that was used out of that account. Birthday cards, that's a couple hundred right there, comes out of that account.
Which account is that?
Discretionary.
What line item is that?
It's one from
Oh,
the
okay,
bottom.
got it, okay.
That's kind of, a catch-all sort of.
So that
within
Jones and
budget.
Beach one will be one reason potentially why this year is overspent in that regard?
I'm sorry?
That Jones and Beach study will be one of the reasons why the
Correct.
discretionary account is
Yep.
overspent?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. The 2024 wage distribution of the 200,000, can you, what was the COLA that came with that? Because I don't recall any meeting where the COLA was discussed for.
Our COLA was 5.25% in this budget. So that 200,000, 5.25% COLA came out of that.
And that was decided at a select board
Selectmen's
meeting?
Yep, and it was did we know about it by the public hearing? I think we might have.
I don't recall it coming up at all.
We didn't know it at the public hearing. Usually, it was late. Usually, and I looked back the last 5 years of COLAs yesterday, and usually, and what I did was I went back to the Budget Committee public hearing meeting minutes, because it was usually announced there.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think in fiscal year 2024, it was late, because it was pretty high. I mean, I think that's the highest ever, and I think the selectmen were trying to really, think about it a lot before they came up with the decision on the COLA.
I have a couple more. I'm willing to take a seat if somebody else wants to ask one. Go ahead. Yeah? What's the assumption for wage administration? I know that when we were talking at a select board meeting for the wage study, I had highlighted potential for administering the salary one time per year versus administering it at everyone's anniversary date, the latter process being pretty burdensome on the finance director. So what's the working assumption in this?
The working assumption,
Anniversary dates.
Did the select board ever
currently-
talk about it?
I think I
As they
may
promised they
have
would?
mentioned it to individual selectmen. I mean, my feeling on it, I think the employees would love it. I just don't think the town wants to spend that kind of money.
We don't know what kind of money it is unless
I
you do
think
the
we looked
analysis,
at it,
do we?
didn't Yeah, more than 100,000, which is the reason the year they did switch to anniversaries, they did it because they needed to save the money, because we had just done the wage study. And it was a way to be able to adjust salaries and afford, and be able to afford it. We didn't have enough money in the wage study account to pay
Right.
for it. So switching over would be expensive. I mean, I think I'm for it. I think all the employees would be for it. Question is, the selectmen did not put that much money in the budget to do it.
So I was at the meeting and I didn't hear the select board talk about it at all. So
Oh,
where
I
did
don't
they
know
talk
that,
about
I
it?
don't know that, I think I talked to them individually and said it was a thought, and I think one of them may have been at a budget meeting when you mentioned it.
I mentioned it at the select board meeting.
Yeah, so you,
Yeah.
I mean, you folks can certainly put the money in. I'm not sure that the selectmen would
So
be
I wonder
opposed
if
to
the
it.
analysis could show, I mean, if it wasn't January, if you did it in April, if you had a single day.
Well, what would be-
I worry about Lynn's ability, no disrespect, the timing that she's got to deal with it for 70-something employees. Every single month, she's got to sit there and take a look at it and adjust the budget, and all this gets adjusted all the time. It doesn't make any sense to me administratively.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be towns, it was pretty, well, way back, say 30 years ago or so, it was common to have salaries effective January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Then many towns went to, like, the beginning of April, after town meeting.
Right.
And many of them, I think Newbury does, April 1st. And for the reasons you're saying.
Yep.
Again, the selectmen made the decision, it was a fiscal decision, because they needed to save the money. That's what
Okay,
it was.
well,
And it
I-
does. I mean, it's hard. Some people say, I think one of the reasons the selectmen were talking about it said, well, then it would match up with when department heads did evaluations, which are on anniversary dates. And that was the other reason. I mean, they thought it would be easier there. But I agree. I mean, I don't think it was really welcomed by employees when it happened, because many of them were ready for their salary adjustment July 1st, and some of them waited till August, September, October, November, and some waited 11 months that year.
Well,
I was one of
anyway,
them, so I wasn't thrilled, but
I guess my editorial is for whatever it's worth. I think the selectmen should be talking about it and gaining the information on what it cost by period, and understanding what it means to Lynn, not only in her budgeting process, but her forecasting process, and weigh that in, for whatever that's worth. I don't hear them having a public conversation about managing the business from the point of view of doing that, and I consider that an important conversation about how people do their job and what it's meaning, what we do to them when we create these budget processes the way we do them. And you talked about Newberry. So the Newberry, your colleague in Newberry in the October Innertown Record said that she was going to prioritize the budget at or lower expense without impacting the employees. Do you have any sense of what it is she's going to be doing that can allow her to?
No, I had lunch with her on Friday, as a matter of fact, last Friday, and I did ask her. I mean, she is
Did you?
looking
Good.
into it. She is hopeful that she can do that. And
Really?
I'll be interested to hear how she does it.
That she will, it was 1017 Innertown Record, she was prioritizing the budget at or lower expenses without impacting the employees. That suggests that the employees will get their wages, I assume, right, their raises and the COLA, and somehow she's going to come in at a flat budget. I'm curious to see how she's going to do that.
Me too.
Okay.
And I was with Sunapee too, and so she was interested as well.
My last comment is on Sutton. If you take a look at Sutton, I've been, as you know, I've been curious about why it is the Budget Committee doesn't have any input on wage. And in Sutton, the responsibility for the wage study rests with the Budget Committee. So are there policies here or within the state that puts wage in the responsibility of the Select Board? Or is that just something that has been tradition here, or how does that work?
It's certainly not, I don't think any law mentions who does salaries necessarily. I mean, obviously, the selectmen make decisions on who gets paid what.
Yeah.
I think the Budget Committee can look at salary studies and things, but I don't think it's their responsibility to conduct wage studies. Is that what Sutton does? You're saying the Budget Committee
But
does?
Budget Committee has responsibility for the salary study work, whether they conduct it or outsource it the way you
Yeah.
do with a contractor.
Yeah,
They
I
hand
mean-
that over.
It could be that the selectmen think that they have the time to do it. I don't know.
How many-
I mean, it's not common. I've never heard of it happening that way, but it certainly could.
How many employees does Sutton have?
Handful? I don't think they have
Right,
many.
so much
Yeah.
less than New London, I would imagine.
Does that matter?
I certainly don't want to be in the business of determining someone's wage that I don't know what they've been doing all year long. I'm not comfortable with that. I think that is the job of the selectmen. They have more information on performance and people's value. That's my own opinion.
Yeah, it's fair.
So
Yeah, it's fair.
do you feel like you should be judging people's salaries?
No, I'm talking about having some oversight over 60% of the budget,
I
which
think,
is the
I think we
wages.
do when we talk about salary and wages. We can certainly change line items.
Okay, that's
as a
what,
budget
so,
committee.
Yeah, I mean-
That's
Okay.
our purview.
okay,
You have
so we can
100%
turn,
you have 100% purview of coming up with these numbers.
Okay.
Initially. I mean, obviously, town meeting can change things
Yeah.
however they want.
Okay.
I think towns can have, I mean, some towns don't even have a budget committee, right? So they can, selectmen and budget committee can cooperate and say, okay, we want you to work on whatever.
Yeah.
Some of them have more of a role in the capital improvements program. And in this town, it does. There are some budget committee members that sit on that committee. So it certainly can be any way the town wants it.
I'd like to move on, just given time. We're at 7, unless anyone else has any important questions.
I do. I have two.
Well, let's let John and what's going to go next.
Just very quickly, when do we know what COLA and steps and everything's going to be?
I hope the selectmen will be talking about it either Thursday night or their following meeting. I think
Okay.
they will get back onto the schedule of having these discussions before the public hearing, because it always used to be that way, but I think, when COVID happened and cost of living went way up, they really waited to the last minute to kind of see what the budget looked like. I think that's the reason why it was late.
Because really, with 150,000 lingering out there, it can affect how we think about other things.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we need to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's also something that we've done in the past. I think, this is the same question we've had the last few years, right? So it's not different than anything that's come up last year or the year before. Charlie, you have a question?
Kim, these are two general questions for somebody new to the committee. On retirement funding amounts. Help me understand how those are set. That's the first question. And secondly, do we as a town have any unfunded retirement obligation, or are we 100% funded?
So we are in the state of New Hampshire retirement system, which is underfunded, like I think every government retirement system in the country, I think, is in some jeopardy. I think New Hampshire does a good job, but I think they are also trying to deal with their unfunded amounts, and all towns that are in it will have part of that liability. We did we come up with our unfunded amount for retirement? Did we do that special audit?
We did, but I don't know the number off the top of my head for that.
So our auditors do have, we had a special audit done to see what New London's liability is. Every town, police and fire, every town who has full-time police and fire must be in the retirement system. Other towns can, and teachers must be in the retirement system. Other towns may choose to have their employees, office staff and highway recreation can be in the retirement system. New London made that decision, I'm not sure when, decades. So we're in the retirement system. The state of New Hampshire sets the rates, the employer rates for both the police and fire and the other employees. So town of New London has no ability to change how much it costs or who's covered. Now, we looked several years ago about getting out. There is a legal way to get out, at least for employees, but it's essentially impossible to get out. So I would say that's one area of the budget that you don't really have any ability. If you hire full-time employees, they are covered by the state retirement system at the rates set by the state.
So does that mean that at some future point in time, the town faces potential significant additional contribution based on the unfunded portion in the total state retirement budget?
Yes, if the state decides to deal with their unfunded liability that way, it could. It could say to all towns, this is the
Okay.
amount you owe.
Is that a concern?
I've never heard of it happening, but it potentially could.
Is it a concern that we should, as a committee, and we as a town should be thinking about in either this budget or subsequent budgets, understanding that those liabilities aren't going to go away? In fact, as wages increase, that unfunded portion in its value also increases, or it's
Yep, as wages go up, the cost goes up.
right.
Yep.
Is this
Yeah, I
something we
think the
should
budget
be
committee should think
talking
about all of these potential things. Just because it has never really happened doesn't mean it won't happen. And it goes along with what BB was talking about recently with the school. You know, things could happen. You should always consider it. Whether, I'm not sure if any towns yet, and we could research it, have any towns created funds for this? Are they saving up?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any, but yeah, I mean, sure.
But our
possible.
total,
I mean, I would
our
hope-
total goes into the state pool,
Yeah.
and therefore they then redistribute an amount out of the pool, assign it to the town.
They haven't assigned us anything yet. I mean, I think.
So our calculation then of whatever the dollar amount is our own internal, your and
Are we-
Lynn's calculation.
Actuarial firm.
An
It's an
actuarial,
actuarial?
right, because
Okay.
we wanted to get the audit has always had that notation on it that we didn't know the amount, so we did have
Okay.
that done.
Do we know the New London unfunded retirement
No.
number?
No.
Because we're aggregating the pool, so we don't know ours.
And again, I
And
mean,
we could be liable for the unfunded portion of some other town. It doesn't
I
matter.
would hope no. No, I don't think that would happen. Right, because there are little teeny towns that maybe have one police officer. I mean, I would not, I don't know how they will spread it out. Again, I don't think they have never done it before.
Okay.
But certainly, you can go on the state retirement system, they have a lot of information there, and again, I think most states have the problem with their retirement systems.
They
Where
do, and it
they
doesn't
haven't
mean
put the money
because-
away, and the benefits are guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, we want to be first in so many things. Why not that, right?
Right. I don't think New Hampshire's among the worst. I mean, I think There are other states that are worse
Well,
off.
it's sort of like.
Rhode Island,
it's-
for one.
it's keep kicking the can down the road kind of thing. And I'm not a proponent of that. My second question is an educational one as well, to understand overall budget, and it relates to health and dental. Tell me, how does that work? What's the policy? How's the rate established? Is the rate we see as increases in this budget already been received by the provider, or are we anticipating rate increases?
So,
How does that work?
okay, so each year we get from our insurance, health insurance carrier and dental, a maximum rate not to exceed.
Right,
And so we probably won't know the final rate probably after the public hearing. I think some years we learn it a little early. So we get that figure, and Lynn has put that figure in. So we have the guaranteed maximum in.
okay.
Employees do contribute to the health insurance as well. But that rate that we get set, and it gets set based on, well, we're a July renewal, so our final rate gets set a little later. I think maybe some of the January renewals may already know their increases. I mean, it does go up every year. This year, it's 14,
It's a pretty significant number.
14.6.
Yeah.
So it's higher than usual. And, the health insurance people tell us there's various reasons for it. People held off on procedures during COVID,
Yeah.
or, and the cost of things are going up. But
14.6 is the not to exceed?
guaranteed not to exceed.
Guaranteed not to exceed.
Yep.
Right,
School
so,
district's just got theirs, it's 9.2.
right.
I'm sorry, Bibi,
The school district just got their rate, it's 9.2% increase this year.
so are they in the same,
No.
it's a different contract, different
And different
provider,
towns will have different rates. I mean, it really depends in part on exposure. I mean, the claims
Yeah.
that the town has had.
So when we apportion it within the budget, within the respective departments, is there a methodology that is used to do that?
No, it's how many employees they have, right? How many single
By
plans?
number of employees and by type of plan?
Type of plan, right.
I see, okay. When's the last time we bid out that contract?
Lynn and I are always looking, we talk to other insurance companies from time to time. I think last year we did it. I want to say maybe, had to be 7 years ago, we did a really big review of it. We had insurance companies come in to present to the selectmen. They discussed their plans, their costs. We had an employee committee that vetted them. So that was, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago. I'm looking around for anybody who was still here, the chief was. So that was a big one. And what we found, and what we found last year, when Lynn and I looked at it, we have not found plans that come close to the offerings of Health Trust. Health Trust is a pooled insurance. Many towns and cities use it. They know towns and cities, and so they base their, they craft their plan based on the needs of towns and cities. So we haven't found any other company that can come close to what they provide, although we've looked.
So when the budget amount is at 14% plus amount not to exceed, when the actual rates are received, then our budget is not adjusted, we just use the excess to go into the surplus?
Well, it depends when we knew. I mean, if we found out, we'd change the numbers now. But I think we usually find out after
It's a
the public
lagging,
hearing.
yeah.
It's a lagging thing. Sometimes I think we have come in under, which is always good.
So if that happens, and it comes in at 9.96%,
Yep.
the delta between what we have budgeted and that amount, what happens to that money at that
It
point?
becomes surplus in the budget
Surplus,
now.
okay.
And that could be some of the area where the selectmen would use to pay for the other things.
Okay.
That when you say, where are you going to find it in the budget? We might say, oh, guess what? We just saved $40,000 because the insurance came in lower. But if we knew the rate prior to the day you have to sign off on the budget, it could be changed.
Okay,
We would change it lower.
all right. Yeah, I mean, it's a significant number.
Oh, yeah,
When you
absolutely.
you look at it across the board. And I'm a proponent of bidding it on a more frequent basis than 7 years. just because I think it's good business practice to do that. But I
Right.
don't know what your alternative
I would agree too, Charlie, except for we know that there's so few, especially with the commercial. The commercial insurers can't probably offer the kinds of plans we have.
Yeah,
And, getting employees on board to do a major change with less benefits is tough. We try and provide the insurance that they know that their colleagues in other towns have the very same policy.
yeah.
I'm
I'm not looking to
Right.
reduce benefits. I'm looking to just let market forces have an impact if they exist, and pursue those options. And if they come back with the same answer, fine. But I would recommend we bid.
I mean, it was a good exercise because we had the employee committee, and I think they really appreciated being able to talk about these things, talk to the insurance folks who came in and met with them, and then presented to the whole town. And I think that it was kind of an eye-opener. And I think employees understand insurance is not cheap. Some of the employees have their own businesses. They know what other people pay. So they appreciate that it's expensive. It is.
Anything else before we move on?
Chris, there was just questions last week on the assessor budget and the legal budget that was deferred to Kim. I don't know if they're still around the table, but
The assessing, we are in Tri-Town Assessing, which is New London, Newbury, and Sunapee. And since, when I prepared the budget, I did not have the Tri-Town budget. They did approve that, I want to say last week or 2 weeks ago. So if you wanted to, you could reduce assessing by $1,000. I've recalculated the figures, and feel free to reduce it by $1,000. So, and the way we do that is, the Tri-Town assessing budget is apportioned by percentage of parcels. So Sunapee has the most, then New London, and then Newbury. So we get the Tri-Town budget, they're on a calendar year. So what I do is I have to get their 2023 budget and 2024 proposed budget and divide it in two because we're on a fiscal year. So I need part of 23 and part of 24. So mine is a guess. They can be closer to accurate with theirs. So, but I'd feel comfortable reducing it by 1,000.
So maybe we just take note of that when
Yep.
as we get closer to voting.
Right. And for legal, if we have employment cases or contracts, we've had a lot of contracts that we have to send through legal to make sure they're consistent with our insurance company. So some years we have more legal expense than others. The Budget Committee has in some years cut it.
Yeah.
It's a guess.
Right.
If we don't have a lot of contracts, or purchasing land is another one. Planning and zoning, that's also using the legal budget. So we've had some cases in planning and zoning where we've had to get legal assistance.
Are you seeing any increases with assessments and people?
Not yet, and I'm hoping we don't.
Okay.
But that could be an area.
Right.
Because here in New London, you can go to the BTLA, which is essentially free to do, but in New London, if you have a property tax bill of $150,000 or $200,000, you're probably going to go to Superior Court, and that's more costly for the town to defend than BTLA. So we hope we don't have any of those cases. I hope you're all very happy with your assessments. Pass the word? No? Okay.
All right. Why don't we move on to police? So we'll bring up Chief Cobb.
Take the mic.
And Chief, just before we start, do you want us to use these handouts?
Yes, so
For the
I
discussion.
handed something out to you at the recommendation of BB Casey to summarize essentially the items that had changed. So those are those sheets that you see in front of you. I didn't do every single line item. Those are just the items that have changed, both increases and decreases.
Great.
So do you want to do police first?
Yeah, why don't we do police and, yeah, we'll start with police and then go to dispatch.
Okay. So I'll work off of essentially that sheet that you have there in front of you. I mean, I'm happy to go over every single line item if you wish, but the ones that have changed are probably going to be the ones most of note to you.
Maybe just for the budget committee members, one is for dispatch and one is for police department. So
Yes.
the one she's going to review is the bigger one, which is police, which is the front and the back.
Thank you,
So
Chris.
if you just look at the top.
Yep.
Just right there.
So our telephone line item did decrease a little bit, couple $1,000s. We entered into a better monthly plan that wasn't as much money as was originally quoted. Computer license and fees that I requested to be increased by a few $1,000s. It pays for various licensing costs and other fees. One of the big increases in fees is going to be the maintenance and remote access and general support of some of the speed feedback signs that you've seen around town for 2 of those. 'Cause those have annual costs associated with them so that we can remote access them, get data from them, get historical data, and that kind of thing. So that was one of the reasons for the increase in license and fees, but generally, things are going up in terms of licensing and fees. No change in, I guess I'll just go down to the next one that did change, and then certainly we can fill in the blanks if you wish to do it that way. New cruiser, I did ask for an additional $2,000 in that one. The plan right now is to transition out our existing K9 cruiser, and our 2020 Patrol Tahoe would become the new K9 cruiser. This line item would pay for a new Patrol Tahoe that's primarily used by supervisors or when we have inclement weather or in case another cruiser is out of service. So this is the amount used to cover the cost of a new Tahoe. The state bid pricing went up about $10,000 for Tahoes. And the reason why we're going with a Tahoe is that Dodge is not making a Charger anymore. So there's not a like sedan that I would be interested in at this point. And I think it's important for us to have a cruiser, a marked cruiser in the fleet that has four-wheel drive capabilities.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So from now on, we're not going to be using sedan cruisers, we're going to be using,
Not unless they make another one that we're interested in. But yeah, they're not making the Chargers anymore.
okay. There's been quite a bit of price difference between a sedan and a Tahoe?
Yeah, you know, the sedans, when we got them in 2021, I don't remember the price of those at that point. Do you recall, Heidi? Is it 28?
I was thinking 30.
Yeah, I think it was about 28,000. I'd have to double check if you wanted the numbers of the sedan in 2021. But if you recall, that was the year that the dealership had accidentally ordered 2 and said that to us jokingly, in case if we accidentally ordered 2, if you want another one. And we said, yes, please, because cars were so hard to come by at that point. So yeah, that's the reason. And then the state bid pricing went up $10,000 from the Tahoe that I just purchased to next year's pricing, the state bid pricing, which we participate in.
So moving to these Tahoes is a quantum leap in the cost of replacing cars now, right?
I don't know if I'd categorize it as a quantum leap, but it's certainly an increase in price. But that's, they're not
25,
making the
30.
sedans, so I can't help that.
Okay, thank you.
Question, please. Have you considered the possibility in a cost-effective way to do some light armoring of some of the vehicles?
I'm sorry?
Light armoring of some of the vehicles?
Oh, light armoring? I have not considered that at this point.
Chief, I have a couple questions on the cruiser. How often do we replace them? What's our asset
It used to
life?
be one a year for a while, and I don't know what year it changed. It was a warrant article, and so under the previous chief, he then put it in the budget. I don't know. It was many, many years ago. I don't remember exactly when that
Is it every
happened.
4 years they get replaced, or 5 years?
No, not quite that often. In the past, we had gotten a new cruiser every year in the budget,
Yep.
and generally that was one of the frontline patrol cars. And the practice had been at that point to run that brand-new car 24/7, no matter who was driving it. When we had this opportunity before us for the two cruisers, we decided to change things up a little bit, and we assigned people to each cruiser. So, for instance, Car 2 and Car 4, those two new Chargers, each have, one has 28,000 miles on it, and the other has 34,000 miles on it. So instead of one car having those two numbers added together, we're able to split them up and hopefully extend the life of those two cars a little bit longer. That way also they're not run 24/7. So that being kind of a new thing for us, I don't know exactly how that's going to work out. Those cars, so they're going to average about 30,000 or 25,000 miles in 1 year. So if I'm trying to forecast, they would have about 77,000 miles by December of 2025 when we're planning for fiscal year '27. So I would anticipate asking for a cruiser then, if not before. But I mean, because if they only have that many miles, you know, by the time fiscal year '27 rolled around in July of '26, we'd probably be looking for cruisers at that point.
How old is the car that we're replacing this year?
2018, and it's got 93,000 miles on it.
5 years, okay. So I was doing some searching, and I was looking at Hanover's budget for a lot of reasons, and I found that Hanover has a budget for cars, and their budget's $64,000. And when they forecast out into fiscal year '28, their budget is $74,000. And the reason for that is they are ordering Ford SUV
Are they leasing them?
hybrids. No, they're purchasing them.
Purchasing? Okay.
So I wonder, for the sake of the taxpayer, rather than spending $72,000, can you look at the alternatives and even save money on gas by looking at a hybrid at $10,000 less a car?
I might consider doing that for when we're ready to replace those frontline patrol vehicles. This one that we would be replacing is the K9 car, so it really needs to be replaced with another SUV. So the SUV that we would be looking to purchase is going to be replacing that supervisor car essentially, and then hopefully, and this is the plan as of now. Of course, if the K9 car or the other one goes and blows a transmission or something that can't be fixed, we have to pivot a little bit. But the K9 car needs to be an SUV, so.
These are SUVs.
Yes. Not all of them, no.
No, the ones I quoted you as an SUV.
Oh, yeah, the hybrids, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's an SUV. If you need an SUV, why wouldn't that be? Again,
The
I'm trying to save
K9
money in the budget, right? So,
Sure, yep. Yeah, I might consider that for when we need to replace two cars at once. But for this fiscal year, I'd be looking to replace the existing Tahoe that we have with another Tahoe.
so I would like you to take a look at the alternative SUV and, explain to us why that won't fit, that won't work.
It sounds like it's for a future use, though, not this year in the budget, right? We're not talking about,
You're talking about replacing the car in the 2025.
right, so you're suggesting what I'm hearing is you're suggesting that the hybrid instead of the Tahoe new cruiser.
Correct. I'm suggesting a Ford SUV hybrid or something like it instead of,
Right.
that's $10,000 less.
I'm not sure if you could do that in time for the budget. That would be, what, that's like in the next month or something like that for you to have to evaluate?
I would definitely consider it for fiscal year '26, but I think it's a little bit soon to look at things for fiscal year '25. There's some schools of thoughts on if you're happy with Ford Cruisers, if you're not happy with Ford Cruisers. Some departments I know haven't been happy with Fords, but it's not only Fords, it's any sort of cars. So you'll get departments that are more likely to go with a certain make or model of a car than others. But for this replacement, I think it's appropriate for a Tahoe to be considered. But definitely something I would look to in the future. And that's also not to discount electric vehicles in the future. But I think at this point, we're just not in a position that we can support that type of
I agree with that.
electric vehicle, and we just lack the infrastructure right
I
now.
thought a hybrid would be good from a gas point of view. Chris, to
Yeah.
your point of it not being, work not being able to get done for this budget, and we could talk about this before this budget committee, I guess, retires for the year, but it points to, if things got to be pushed off the next year, when does the budget committee deal with those issues? At this point, we squeeze information into 12 weeks, and if there's research that has to get done, it can't get done for this budget, so it gets pushed off to the following year. And that's,
Well, we have
That's an
done
issue.
research on cruisers. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's
It's,
okay.
I didn't just plug this in.
no, I'm sure you didn't. I'm just talking generally.
you know,
I'm not
okay.
talking about you. I'm talking generally.
I think where my point is, Colin, is
Yeah.
that you're asking the police chief in the next 6 weeks to evaluate a new car for a new use that she has a lot of things that are being asked of her, not just cruisers, but just day-to-day work, so it's unrealistic to.
Oh, no, listen, I appreciate it, and I'm not disagreeing with you. My point is that we'll sit next year and we'll have some questions, and it'll be too short of a period of time. So when does the budget committee meet to have a list of those things that need researching, so that the budget in question can be impacted by that research?
That would also require the town department heads to have their budgets in a lot earlier.
Or no, you can talk asset classes. You can look
I
at
think at any point in time,
vehicles.
you can go ask any department head what they're thinking of in the near future. As the process as it's not done now is that when we get our budget, we get that from the department heads. So when they presented their budgets to the selectmen, how many weeks ago was that? It's like 6 weeks ago right? So that was part of the discussion. I mean, that's the first opportunity. Unless we're asking the department heads to present their budgets earlier, so that, to your point, if you want more time to evaluate single line items like this, or have asks of department heads to do a tremendous amount of work to look at, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, but I'm also thinking of the timing and just everything that's asked. I don't know if that's realistic. So unless the process changes,
That's what I'm getting to, Chris.
yeah,
right?
I understand what you,
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a different ask than what we're asking here, which is to evaluate the $72,000
I agree.
for the
Yeah,
cruiser.
I took it up a level, and
Yeah.
using this as an example of the budget committee can't get its arms around anything under the current process, because it's too soon to get it done for the current budget.
I mean, I disagree with that. There's a lot of things that we are able to change. Maybe not every single line item, but there are a lot of things that we talk about and discuss that we make changes as well as the selectmen during the process. I mean, we can have a larger discussion on the process, but I don't think right now.
No, that's fine, yeah. And I would propose that we do that before we terminate our session in this season, and I would welcome examples of what it is we've changed, because I'm not sure we've changed anything.
May I propose
Please.
that, and I understand, and I do believe that the local governments, just in the interest of both resource conservation and savings, should perhaps try to go as much as possible into hybrid or fully electric vehicles. May I suggest that even though our charter is only for this year, that at the end of this season, as we're wrapping up, that we have special interest items that we would look for next year, and that would perhaps set the tone for department heads to look forward to, and to study for next year. So next year, when we're, back again, whether it's all of us or some of us, we can then take to, say, hey, this was a special interest item, now we're going to hold you up to it in what research has done.
Yeah.
So that way they can have a time to research.
Don't disagree. I also think we need to be cognizant of how many asks we have of
Sure.
each of the department heads, right? So every meeting, whether it be the last couple meetings or meetings before, we're always suggesting new committees. We'd like you to do this research. We'd like you to do that research. All I'm saying is we need to prioritize what those are, because we can't just continue to add to the list.
Certainly.
It's unrealistic. Okay. Any other questions for Chief Cobb on the cruiser?
Okay. Okay, down to other professional services. This is the contract we have with the Merrimack County Attorney's Office to prosecute our cases and offer guidance when needed. They went up on their price in our fiscal year '23, and at the time, it was about an 11% increase. I have checked with the county attorney, and there's no change for this year that we're in, but certainly recognizing this is through fiscal year '25, I did add an 11% onto our current rate of $10,417, just to be on the safe side, because I don't know what the county commissioners would do. They may choose to not increase it, or they may choose to increase it. But that would be the reason for that. John?
Going back to another line item, Police Department computer support, 25,500. This is our share of the combined computer support for the town, is that it? I don't, I mean, the police department's share of that. Okay. Is this a place when Colin talks about where this type of stuff should be consolidated somehow?
Our computer services already are consolidated. IT support is through VC3, and that covers the whole town.
It does, okay.
We did that a few years ago, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best things the town has ever done. It's great to have that type of IT support.
Thank you.
Equipment lease and rentals, that went up by a whopping $50. That covers our copy machine. We do have a lease. It's a monthly fee, and that went up slightly, so I tried to account for that. Travel and meals, I asked for an increase of $1,000. There is one conference that I know of that I'd like to send an officer to that's in another state. It's in Boston. And that would be an overnight stay, which kind of ties into conferences and training. There is an increase in that. I asked for an increase of $5,000. The cost of training has increased. What I could send an officer to for a few $100s now costs several $100s sometimes, depending on what the training is. We are able to go to more trainings in person, certainly these days, as opposed to the online ones. Ammunition also comes out of this line item, because we use that for training, and the price of ammunition has increased in recent years. And starting in January of 2025, all police officers in New Hampshire will be required to attend at least 24 hours of in-service training. The current requirement is 10, I believe, and so that's going to require more money to send people to more training. General equipment, there's a large decrease in that one, and the reason for that is this is where our firearms project came out of last year, but the things that are covered in general equipment generally are tasers, radars for the calibration, our computer, or our door keypad system. I put computers in there, but I think that's actually misplaced. Replacement of the refrigerator, shredder, anything else that might be needed. So if you look at general equipment over the past few years, you can see that it was at $10,000, and we had overspent that line, not by much in fiscal year '23, but we had overspent it in prior years, and so I think a $15,000 rate would be appropriate. Also, we did replace our tasers with a newer model, and so that cost has gone up from what we used to have.
Now, does that mean that next year it will increase again, or do you?
No, that's a 5-year program that we're on with the tasers, so that we'll have those for that.
So
we'll have that price for those years.
This budget amount would probably maintain itself for a little bit.
I think generally, yeah. Unless we were to go with a different, the Royal Group is the name of the company that does our keypads. You see those little squares next to all of our doors, unless they were to really change their services or that were to stop functioning and we had to do something different. So generally, I think that line item would be about that much. Gasoline is always a fun one to try and predict. This current year that we're in, I had asked for $37,000 because at the time when I made that budget that we're in currently, gas was quite a bit more expensive. So I asked for a decrease in that one. And because generally over time, if you look at the average, I hope we won't exceed $30,000, but unknown. New employee expense did go up by $250 because we had overspent that one a little bit last year. And the PD K-9, I had asked for an increase of $500. We do try to utilize the K-9 donation fund as much as we can, but certainly donations are not a given, and so it's appropriate, I think, for us to cover the costs associated with the dog.
I have a question in another line item, which is in the conferences and training that. I had a circular from Homeland Security talking about a really significant increase in ammo, in the cost of ammo.
Ammunition, yes.
Is this considered here?
It is. We are switching with our new firearms project. We're switching from 45 to 9 mil, which is a little bit less expensive, but we need more of it because you can fit more bullets in the magazine. So I did account for that. I talked to our firearms range master, and he thought that would be an appropriate amount.
Okay, I'm saying they were talking about double-digit increases in the cost of ammo, even, and I think you do reload your own in some cases?
No.
No, you do not? Okay.
No, we do not.
So alien powder going up to 20% starting this year, so sportsmen are going to really...
Chief, is the overtime wage increase, is that just based on, you're anticipating more overtime, or is that more of just the increase in salary?
Oh, excuse me, yeah, I guess I didn't cover that one, Chris, I'm sorry. Yes, that's in anticipation of the increase in, I'm not anticipating more overtime per se, it's just with the increase in wages.
Right.
Overtime had been interesting over the past few years. Up until fiscal year +21, I think it was, we had two different line items, one for overtime and one for training wages. And theoretically, if I went to training one week and Officer Walls had to cover my shift for that week, that's where the money should have come from. It was just not clean. It was difficult to manage. It was difficult to tell finance that, oh, make sure Officer Walls' wages that week come out of training wages instead of overtime. It wasn't very clean. So I combined those two, and I think that's a better way to manage it and be able to predict how much we're going to spend in overtime. So the reason for that increase is that I anticipated the increase in wages, but also it hadn't increased for several years. It was always just a set block of money, as opposed to trying to predict how much of the money would be going toward overtime.
Thanks. Additional questions for Chief? Charlie? Go.
On the telephone, is that rate that you get for telephone the rate we get for all telephone for the town? So it's all one, and maybe that's a question to Lynn. It's all one bill, so all one rate, so.
Well, technically, it's like 4 bills, but yes, it's all the same.
All right. Shift differential is at 59.40, but in every year for the last 3, we spent near that amount of money.
Yep, so last year, or rather, in this current fiscal year, I'd asked for this last year, I asked to expand the shift differential. When shift differential, which is $1 extra per hour for the overnight hours, when it was instituted here many years ago, the officers and dispatchers, I think, were all on 8-hour shifts, and it was from like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Over the years, as the shifts have changed and transitioned to more 10 and 12-hour shifts, I thought it would be appropriate to pay the person an extra $1 an hour for their entire time on the shift, as opposed if they're working 6P to 6A, as opposed to paying them just for 8 hours from 10P to 6A.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the expansion
thank
there.
Radio repair and replacement at 10,000. I just looked historically to what our actual expense has been. Is that, help me understand leaving it at 10 versus maybe a little lower?
You know, it had been 10 for many years, and I don't think this reflects, because I think we encumbered money for fiscal year '23. I don't know if this one has that in there.
Yeah, it looks like there was,
Right, we did encumber money, but it's not going to show on this until
Right.
the auditors put it on the auditors move it around. I don't apply it to the expense line item.
Are you referring to the 855 we spent in fiscal year '23?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, no, we actually spent quite a bit more than that.
okay,
But the radios weren't in by the time the year ended, closed out, so we encumbered it.
okay. That's it, thanks. Emily.
Any additional questions? All right, should we move to dispatch?
Another one.
Okay. So one more thing that on overtime wages, I did increase that a little bit, and again, that's to account for the same reasons of why I did that in the police budget, which I hadn't put on your sheet, so I'm sorry I overlooked that one. But we'll get the two little ones out of the way, and then we can talk about the big one. So the equipment repair and maintenance is a decrease, and the reason for that is that we had a project last year, or that we're still working on now for some equipment on Mount Kearsarge. And so that's the reason for the decrease in that one, is that was a one-time project. And then there's an increase in the miscellaneous line item that pays for the rental of our water cooler, and it also pays for the gifts that we give our dispatchers in appreciation for their service during National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in April. And so we needed a little bit of an increase in that line item to account for that. So the largest one certainly is going to be computer license and fees, which is something that covers it's going to cover our new CAD and RMS system. Again, CAD is a computer-aided dispatching software and record management service or system software. So the reason for that is due to a change in the vendor for our CAD and RMS services. That additional fee will cover the 20% maintenance cost, cloud hosting and management, because we're going to transition from a traditional physical server to cloud-based. We will realize some revenue from this fee, as we will now be billing the towns we dispatch for, as opposed to those towns paying that vendor directly. And we're still working out what the fees to the other towns are going to be, as some have elected for different levels of service of that software. The most appropriate place, I think, to house this cost is in the dispatch budget, because all towns will require the dispatching services using the CAD, and all towns, New London and all the ones that we dispatch for, will be utilizing the police records management system. So I'll work with Kim, Lynn, and the Board of Selectmen, and we'll explore the best option as to how to structure those fees to the other towns to make sure that it's fair and equitable to those towns. Since it's an entirely new software system, we'll use that opportunity to revisit our pricing model, which I know has been the topic of conversation in the past, to remain a competitively priced communication center that offers what the towns need, while at the same time not pricing out our customers. And the new CAD and RMS is directly related to a couple of terms that I've heard in this budget cycle, and I just want to touch on them a little bit, and that's planning and vision. I've heard a lot about that and trying to forecast costs and things. And this project of a new CAD RMS is something that I had a vision for many, many years. CAD is a computer-aided dispatch system and record management system. Yep. So any sort of a new software, any sort of a transition is going to be a difficult endeavor to undertake. Certainly, cost is usually a factor. It's a very intricate and detailed process. It involves all kinds of stakeholders, certainly New London and all the towns we dispatch for. But despite that challenge and in consideration of the New London Communications Center, their ability to meet not only New London's, but our member agencies' dispatching needs going into the future, I started planning about how I would do that. And that entailed applying for a large grant, which we ultimately received in the amount of $413,000 from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community Policing Services, which, as you can imagine, was not an easy nor a fast process. It started 2.5 years ago. That's how long I've been working on this project. So I'm happy to report that with Lynn's help and a lot of hair pulling my hair out, we've received the money from the federal government, and our anticipated go-live date with this new software is at the end of February 2024. So while indeed it's a large jump in this line item, it directly correlates to the vision and the planning that I have for the communications center, certainly for the town of New London, but also for the towns that we provide dispatching services for.
Can I ask a question about it?
Mm-hmm.
So do we expect then this is a recurring number
Yes.
of this size,
Yes.
yet to determine what would be apportioned to the towns that we support, or is?
Yes,
So
yes,
some
some
of this
portion
will
of
end
this,
up- will-
yep, not all the 70,000 is not the entire cost of this new CAD. It's 55,820, 56,820 is the 20% ongoing maintenance cost, cloud hosting, and management fees. And some portion of that will be realized in revenue from the other towns. But again, some towns have elected different levels of the software, and so I'm literally working with change orders. I have one on my desk right now to review for based on what the other towns. So if they don't elect to use some portion of the software, they shouldn't get billed for it, certainly.
Can you maybe just anticipate, or your thoughts on, out of that 70,000, what amount would we get back in revenue to offset the cost? I mean, not asking the specific, just kind of what you're looking for, ballpark.
Well, New London currently pays about 67% of the dispatching fees, so the remainder then would be covered by the other towns, broken up as appropriate, depending on size. Like, the town of Wilmot is not going to pay as much as the town of Sunapee.
Right. So similar to what we've always done with dispatch, the percentage-wise.
But I think it's a good opportunity for us to revisit what the flat fee is for those towns, just for the dispatching services, and then based on call volume, what that's going to look like.
Right. And, sorry, one
And at the
last-
same time, trying not to
okay.
price them out of our dispatch center.
Yeah. And what would happen if you didn't get the money for this? What's the alternative? I'm just curious.
Yep, that's a great question. I mean, we're making a major transition here with our CAD and RMS, and it's really part of the vision that I have for the communications center to go forward in a new direction. This type of software is going to meet technology needs that our existing software isn't able to currently meet, and so I think it's an important step forward for us to be able to continue in the improving our technology and being able to use various things like e-ticketing and e-crash, which is basically instead of handwriting out a summons, I can scan your license and it all goes right in the computer, and it's going to be a much more efficient system. Also, the data that we'll be able to put in and get out of this program is going to be different. This software system is utilized by some other towns and cities in the state of New Hampshire. Importantly, the town of Hanover and Grafton County will be joining that kind of North Country hub with this. But also importantly, New Hampshire State Police uses this same system. And so we have some towns that we dispatch for that put state on call and vice versa. So we'll be able to like those towns will be able to see, oh, state police went here in my town last night, and the programs are going to be able to talk to each other much more efficiently. So hopefully it'll be a much better way for us to experience information sharing among agencies.
So besides any revenue, there could be some efficiencies and costs.
100% there could be efficiencies. Instead of having to pick up the phone and dial Hanover to say, can you send the fire department here or whatever else, it's going to be able to do CAD to CAD talking, so.
John?
Which, John, you look like that didn't make sense to you.
Well,
Dispatch center to dispatch center without a telephone.
how many different softwares are you dealing with now? That's where I'm a little confused.
This is just for dispatching software
Just
and
for
records management,
dispatching.
so
Okay. And this doesn't carry over into the police department at all?
it does.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where we'll write our police reports
Right.
and,
Okay.
Yep,
And
arrest
thi-
report.
And this is all attached to that $400,000 grant that you got?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Some of the communication subrates that were being discussed today at our exercise, will they be tying in one way or the other? Would this make it more workable than?
I think
before?
it's an experience, or we'll be able to experience some more and better efficiencies with this software. Interoperability in terms of the other agencies that are close by to us, Hanover being one of them, or state police certainly will be able to talk to each other a little bit more efficiently rather than have to pick up the phone and dial someone. We can send that call for service directly to their dispatch center. It pops up and says, oh, a good example of that is Springfield, the town of Springfield. We might dispatch the ambulance there, but the town of Hanover receives that call for the town of Springfield. So they can send that directly to our dispatch center.
It's an effectiveness multiplier.
Let's hope, yes. Yes, I anticipate it will be. And I looked at other dispatching systems in addition to this one. This wasn't the only one that I looked at, but this was by and far the leader of the pack.
Chief, are there, as you implement the software, is there implementation that the other towns have to do?
I guess I don't know. Like, they have to make sure they have Windows 11 and they have
So it's
the
just
internet
they
and.
don't have to download the software that you're,
The software will be all put onto their
Okay.
machines by the company, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there an advantage of our charging them versus their getting a bill from the,
That's just the way that this software is set up. So it's not that each town pays the vendor, it's that the towns will pay us and we hold the licensing here, so.
so does that sort of help us hold on to them as customers? It makes it harder for them to move on to a different dispatch center?
They could
or-
always move on to a different
Yeah.
dispatch center, but it's such a huge undertaking. Anyone that's ever been through Hannah probably appreciates this, a new EMR. So any sort of a new software you're going to go to is hopefully going to last you for a good long while. One area that you might be able to experience some savings in, which I did budget for it because, again, at the time, I wasn't entirely sure when our go-live date was going to be, is that we're going away from a physical server. And so we might be experiencing some reductions there in terms of our backup servers that we're going to need because it's going to be cloud-based. Now, you pay for that on the other end. I just mentioned that we have cloud hosting services that we have to pay for. But going forward, we'll get rid of the physical servers and the initial cost to purchase those.
Is that recurring fee going to be constant, the 56,000? That's not going to change or increase?
I don't think that's going to change, nope.
I assume if anything, it will increase slightly over.
It's a 20% fee based on our purchase that we're doing right now of several $100,000. So if it does increase over time, it might be that we added a new module to the software. And so then they need to account for that.
Okay, so it's not a yearly increase, an admin fee or software fee like we incur with other areas where we see it slightly.
I don't anticipate that. I mean, I'm out to year 5 and it still says $56,820. So,
Okay.
like I said, if we decided to get another module within their software system that cost $10,000,
Yeah.
we'd have to probably pay a 20% maintenance fee on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
Totally changing the subject on you. So I know there's a lot of value in a dog, but I also see that the dog is costing us money and isn't going to be with us forever. So can you expand upon the value that he provides?
Sure, yep. So the dog, if I'm correct, is going to be 8 years old this December. So he's still got some years left in him for sure. But I think there is value in a canine in terms of he's trained in multiple areas in terms of drug, narcotic detection, tracking, and just other, evidence detection. It's not just drugs. If there's an item that's discarded in the woods, he could also track that. So I think that there is some value in that, but the town chose to support a canine unit many years ago, and I think that there is value in it. What's the future of the program after Velo has ridden off into the sunset? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. In terms of if we're going to get another dog after that, I don't know that at this point. There are a lot of variables to consider, but I do think that there's some value in the dog. Certainly the town survived without a canine unit for many years before, and if we needed a canine unit right now and we didn't have our own, we would call other mutual aid agencies, state police, or other local agencies that had one if we needed one. So they're out there, but I do think that there's value in it. He's found people that were hiding in attics, trying to evade the police, and so there's definitely been a lot of opportunities that he has been useful.
Chief, do we get reimbursed when the dog is used outside of the town?
No.
We do not. Is there any reason
No.
for that?
That's not something that we would charge for. I think if we charged a $50 call-out fee for the canine, they just wouldn't call us.
It just gets the dog is based on calls for services used out of town more than it is in town.
I'd have to look at the calls for service, but that's all part of our mutual aid with other agencies. So if they call us to use our dog, I might call them next week to use their polygrapher. So.
Has he ever been used in locating a lost person, or lost child, or anything like that?
Yeah, lost, but by choice. I mean, the person was hiding in an attic, but
Okay.
So yes, he has been utilized in the past
But not
for locating.
For example, an elderly person that is lost or anything like that. Never.
He could be used in that, but again, there's a lot of variables that take place. If our canine would be the best for that, or if we would call for like a bloodhound or more of a specialty dog in tracking that does just that type of tracking.
All right, thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Just to do a time check, don't worry, you'll get to present. But since we're coming up on 2 hours and 30 minutes, I'm just, for the Budget Committee, because typically we'll go to 8:30, I want to just make sure if we haven't finished, what the Budget Committee would like to do. Either continue until we finish fire, or do you want to stop and start again next week? I'm conscious of people who have families and children and dinners and things like that. So, Melissa?
I think we should go ahead and put fire on hold, but continue with the emergency management.
Okay. What are you thinking on that? What are your thoughts, Chief? I mean, you're here every week, but I don't want to assume. Is one faster than the other? You'll do whatever.
I'm not sure if you, there's not a huge amount that's changed in our budget.
Okay. I'm just conscious of usually.
But it doesn't matter.
Okay. What are any other committee members? Any strong opinions? Okay.
What time is it?
It's 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, then why don't we start with EMS, and then we can go to our emergency management, and then we can go to fire if we have time. Is that okay? Is that fine by everybody else? Okay. All right. Who's presenting emergency management? Lou. That's you. Correct.
I'm going to go up there. I can face you guys.
Page 10 for anybody looking in the budget.
It's a fairly simple.
Should be fairly simple.
Those are mine.
Those are yours. Yeah, they look same. Yeah. No, those are yours.
Well, okay, if you look at it, there's only, the items that have increased from last year was the emergency supplies. If you remember, 2 years ago, I told you all that because of the fact that we had completed enough acquisition of MRAs, that I was going to hold off for this year and start again this year, and it's time. And basically what I'm doing is we're buying for the town 25 cases of 12 MREs each for a total of 300. And in 4 years, we got 1,200 total. That corresponds to a burn rate of 300 a day, considering the planning factor is a emergency operations shelter of 100 people and 3 meals a day. That's 300 at the, I'm looking at, what emergency management nationwide considers a 3-day self-sufficiency of both people and town. 900, and that leaves 300 for the use for town officials and other people who may be in a lockdown situation. So that's basically the 1,200. By the way, there's all my items here, since we were talking about planning, we have 2 basic plans that emergency management goes through. One is the hazard mitigation plan. That is, both plans are, every quinquennial, every 5 years. The hazard mitigation plan, it basically is a plan that identifies the hazards to life and limb and property in the town, and there's a LEOP, a local emergency operations plan, that corresponds to a state emergency operations plan, in which we state how we're going to face each disaster. The emergency operations plan is for use only by officials of the town. There is an executive summary that is made public, and the reason why is primarily because of the actions that may be taken by law enforcement and other security apparatus. So this is basically it. Code Red, some of the items that you will see, they're really non-discretionary. Code Red is basically a reverse 911, and we've been subscribed to it from time immemorial. And the equipment repair and maintenance is the increase in that is basically for the repair and maintenance of generators. That includes the office, fire, police, and Department of Public Works. Those are also included in the emergency management. In addition to the MREs, we have a yearly hazmat team fees. We put the CERT team.
So Luke, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Is it worthwhile, just again, because I'm going to be cognizant of time?
Okay.
On the ones that you have any overage or under, those are just the 3 items, right? The code
Yep,
red.
that's it.
Okay. Are there any questions to Lou about any of those line items? You might get your, the more we say, the
Most certainly. No, I just want to give you a little.
But kudos to the highest percentage
It's,
increase of any
good.
line item. For
Thank
the
you.
year. All right. Somebody's got to try it. That's right. All right, Chief, we got you in. Thanks, Lou.
Good evening. For operational budget, we did have the main increases radio repairs. One of the reasons for that is the number of batteries that we're replacing. We haven't, through the COVID period, we didn't replace batteries at a significant number because of the inavailability or lack of, I should say, ability to get them. And so even now, batteries take about 9 months from the time that you place the order to the time that you receive delivery of them. So that has still been problematic, and hence the increase in the radio repair. The other increase was uniforms and safety equipment. Last year, we were lucky and grateful to the Select Board to utilize Gopher funds. And so we had replaced a bunch of PPE, our fire gear. Each set of fire gear now is $3,400. We replace 4 sets, total of 40 firefighters, give or take. The problem is someone like our town administrator may be an inside firefighter, and she may go through a set of gear in 5 years. The National Fire Protective Association gives us a 10-year lifespan on personal protective gear. That's based upon usage. Someone like myself, I'm outside directing the incidents. I may not need gear as much, or you may have more people that are more of an auxiliary role of doing traffic control or a pump operator. They're not receiving the same wear and tear that an inside firefighter would receive. So that pretty significant increase that you see is based upon cutting back last year in an effort to save funds, and then re-implementing the process of replacing 4 sets a year in a 10-year cycle. And from an operational standpoint, are there any questions before I move on to wage administration?
How much does a battery cost?
$224.
Okay. And how long do they last?
All depends on charging cycles. I charge my battery, it lasts about a shift. So my battery will be charged tonight when I go home. So you've got maybe 200 cycles per battery, but some of the batteries on the apparatus have actually a cycling machine that actually reconditions, quote unquote, the batteries. So what happens is, as time goes on, the battery will either not stay charged as long, or the conditioner will say it's no longer usable. And that was the problem that we had last year. We had 3 radios that weren't in service because we didn't have spare batteries for them. We didn't have any batteries. So we had to take them out of service for several months until we received them. So We do have a couple of extra batteries, but we don't have a ton for $224.
I just want to make sure you're done.
I think, as far as the whole budget?
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is from a wage standpoint, certainly overtime wages went up. We don't have the ability at the fire department to look at calls that come in after hours. And so for our newer hire, we were sad to see one of our full-time firefighters leave the department after 6 years and transition up to Lebanon. And certainly grateful to have a new employee, but the new employee is really motivated and comes to a lot of calls after normal working hours, which is great. However, that needs to be compensated at a higher rate. So I'm not even sure if that overtime rate will be sufficient for covering.
I have a couple questions on the operating budget and then something on the wage.
Sure.
So your fire department vehicle repair and maintenance,
Yes.
putting aside the big trucks, where do you get your vehicles repaired?
It all is contingent upon what the issue is. If it is a pump packing, if it is a leaking valve, that would go through DeSorcy, who is located just north of Burlington, Vermont. They have a traveling truck that will show up at the station. If it is an oil change, it would be SG Reed. So sorry for not being more clear. As far as the breakdown, annually for an oil change is right around $1,500.
Yeah, no, you don't have to go through all that, Chief.
Okay.
Hydraulics, where would you have those taken care of?
So if it was like a leaking, let's say on ladder 3, if on the turntable there was a valve leak, that would be through DeSorcy. So they would show up. Fortunately, again, they've got an on-road vehicle that they typically can repair 75% of the issues at our station instead of bringing it to, say, Almonds, Vermont.
Chief Cobb, I think your cruisers go S&P, right? Yes. Right.
Now, we do, for our support vehicles, go to S&P Auto.
So,
Or to Banks. One of, and the Chief Cobb had mentioned Chevy. We are fortunate, for instance, our windshield wiper fluid isn't working in the Tahoe currently, our command vehicle. Rick Gothier, who's the service manager, lives in Wilmette. I'll drop it off tomorrow night. He'll bring it down Friday, have that repaired, and then bring it back Friday night for us. So that's one of the advantages, and we've typically gone with Chevy because of that through Banks, because of that partnership and having limited personnel and not having to shuttle stuff back and forth. So certainly an advantage as opposed to going with Ford or Dodge.
your gasoline and diesel line, we talked last week that the diesel is down at the DPW site.
Yes.
How is that distributed? Is it a
So
allocation of?
Yeah,
some of
so
that
each
budget?
driver has their own code, and so when we fill up, it automatically gets put over to the fire department side of things. Bob's administrative secretary would then divvy it up and send it to Lynn, and then Lynn would take that out of our budget, so.
And the gas piece is on those other cards that.
The
we
WEX
use.
cards, yep.
For the line items, conference and training, dues, subscriptions, miscellaneous supplies, and small tools and equipment,
Yep,
the budget is always, and in some cases over the last 3 years, much higher than the actual. So can we get more refined and perhaps carve some of those dollars down?
We certainly can look at that, and obviously during COVID, it was problematic with training. And so I would say ideally, and what I look at from our training budget, so the cost of training a firefighter is $5.99 per student. We set aside 5 spots for individuals that wish to go to their level 1 training. The individuals do this on their own time. We pay for the class. They do it on their own time. We have a firefighter that just completed the recruit class, so level 1 and level 2. Level 2 was $475 per student. And then I set aside $200 per officer. So if they're taking an ICS class, a leadership class, those are the funds which equal the $7,100. So certainly some of it's based on the last few years and the intricacies there. But it's also available of individuals and what they're able to set time aside for taking those classes. Miscellaneous supplies is just that, and certainly we can look at that. I would guess this year with receiving the new engine that there might be some fittings or some other smaller items that may not be accounted for through equipment repair and maintenance that might get chewed up. But normally, if you look at the previous years prior to, and I know that we only have from 2001, but there are several years that out of $400,000 or $500,000 budget, there's $2,300 left, or $8,000, which every year I look at items and I submit basically a zero-based budget. So if out of the equipment repair and maintenance, we wanted to save $440, that's 2 lengths of hose that cost $220 each.
So I guess in summary, you plan on spending the money that you've allocated.
Hopefully.
Okay. Let's go to the wage. When you take a look at your volunteers,
Yes.
I've got some data in front of me. I'm happy to share with everybody else. 50% of the folks that volunteer for you are 50 years old or older. And close to 1/3 of them are younger than 30. So my question is a concerning one for our future. 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. What's your thought process on continuing a volunteer level that you have and potential need for us to go to wage employees, which would have a pretty big impact on our tax rate?
Significant impact.
Significant impact.
Yes.
And these numbers are pretty telling.
Yeah, you know I like numbers and statistics, and it's something that the Board of Firewards is constantly apprised of. Recruitment and retention has always been an issue for call and volunteer departments, and now they're finding that same issue with career departments where individuals, and it's not that they necessarily have loyalty to the organization, but there might be perceived the grass is greener someplace else. And so how do we retain individuals? Certainly in town, we have we'd call it a more distinguished members of the community, slightly older. We are fortunate that some of our members were in other fire departments, whether it be John Cannon in Portland, Maine, or Ralph Tingley, a former fire marshal down in Connecticut. So those individuals, not only are they slightly older, they're also some of our top responders and participants. And I think it is important looking at the future. One of the things that we've talked about and bounced around is some sort of tax relief, especially with the evaluation and where people are, or difficulties in getting apartments in town. For years, I thought that having some sort of workforce housing for firefighters and looking at, having the Firefighters Association, not necessarily the town New London, the Firefighters Association purchasing a building and to minimize the tax impact. So we look at those things and we heavily recruit, and it's important to get the right people, especially in an organization like ours, where there's not a lot of leverage over individuals other than having an organization, having a culture where people want to be affiliated, and having a culture where people want to help out their town or community. So
listen, there's no easy answer here, but I raise it, I guess I'll use Lou's comment. This might be one of those special interest items as we think about the future and the forecasting ability that we have to try to understand the implication of you having a sufficient force for firefighting and emergency management inside the town. And when is that going to hit our budget for tax purposes?
Yeah, and I think that, heaven forbid the ambulance, and certainly I think, not to speak for our Chief Fireward, but I'm not sure if we're super excited to be running an ambulance. Heaven forbid New London Hospitals stopped providing that service. The fire department would pick that up. In 95% of the communities, the fire department operates the ambulance service, or in conjunction with, for instance, Manchester Fire with AMR, or one of those similar communities. There certainly is a benefit there with respect to policies and procedures of operating your own ambulance, however, and also collecting the revenue that offsets the cost of firefighters, and that certainly at some point would be an interesting look at, to see when that balance or breaking point is. But certainly if we hire additional full-time people, it costs money. Meredith is looking to hire 6 full-time people, potentially. Alton just hired 6. Lebanon is hiring another, or looking to get another 8 firefighters. So it's one of those things that the longer we can go without hiring a completely full-time department, which I don't foresee that happening. You're always going to have to supplement with part-time individuals, as opposed to Hanover, a Lebanon, Hartford. The problem is the more full-time people that you hire, it seems like the less call or volunteer firefighters you have.
Have you tried the college as far as a source of recruitment?
We've had over 40 firefighters from Colby Sawyer College since 1991 affiliated with the New London Fire Department, and probably to the chagrin of their parents, I think 8 of them have become full-time firefighters. Go to school for sports management or nursing or whatever the case is, and then we grab them. And so Pelham, New Hampshire, Dover, Concord, Burlington, Vermont. So they've gone all over.
That's it, thank you.
I think Melissa had a question.
Melissa, go ahead.
So here's those 2 questions. If we wanted you to shave your budget down, where would it be shaved? And if we were to give you more money, where would you put it?
Did anyone else get those 2 questions?
Nope. Just you.
So, it's tough to,
See what you answered.
No, and I've pondered that, as far as like the amount of money. It's always easier if it's, okay, we're going to shave 10,000 or 20 or whatever the case is. We are fortunate to receive phenomenal support by the community. And in turn, I think the fire department, for the amount that it costs, provides a professional service, and we minimize the way that we run things, not only from a fiscal standpoint, but also taking care of our membership. So when I left a couple of minutes ago, we had a fire alarm activation. The individual had burned some food when cooking. We didn't send the entire fire department out. That's different than any other organization that is in our catchment area. Most fire departments send all their firefighters out every single time. So out of, like right now, we're 870 calls for the year. 140 of those are general alarms where everyone gets called. So if we had more money, instead of buying stuff, I would say to look at our part-time employees and to compensate them more. The issue, and we had this discussion when the town did the wage study, is there something that the membership would like to see? People don't join the fire department for the money. But as far as an appreciation, I think that would be an area that certainly money could be contributed to. When it comes to cutting stuff or a dollar amount, maybe not doing the HVAC system as far as air conditioning or maintenance. We do our own cleaning at the station. We do our own painting. We plow out the yard. There's a lot of stuff that we try to do to minimize the impact or request from a tax standpoint. So, if you gave me a breakdown, I could look at every line item, but from our operational budget, there's sorry. So our operational budget, $113,000 for telephone through fire prevention is allocated. If you were to say I had to cut $20,000, I'd have to look at every single line item and say, okay, instead of 4 sets of gear, we're going to purchase 3, and we're going to save $3,400 there. Conference, we can cut a person out, and so it's going to be $599 reduction. So I'd have to look at it each line item so that it didn't affect services. That was a long answer to 2 short questions. My apologies.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Or either that or...
Just for a refresher and general knowledge, I'm Steve Ensign. I'm chair of the Board of Firewards. And New London is one of the unique communities in New Hampshire that has a board of overseers of the fire department. And so we actually vet the budget before it comes to the selectmen and then to you. So it's a 5-member board, and we go through the budget twice with Jay, and he basically does what he just did here, so that we challenge those assumptions. We want to stay on track in replacement of the equipment that the firefighters have to use. And my personal take is simply saying, how much can we cut? We're going to spend what needs to be spent. If you have a breakdown of equipment, you can't suddenly say that we're only going to buy so many batteries because we'll let a couple of radios sit idle. I think we judiciously look at the budget, and if Jay can get through the year and we don't spend some of that money, that's fine. But I think to start off by saying, how much can you cut, then you've got to do that with absolutely everybody that sits over there. So, thank you.
Just doing a time check, we're at 8:30. Any other questions for Chief? No? Did we want to cover Firewards?
No changes in the Board of Fireworks.
No changes, okay. Any questions for Steve on Firewards? It's right above your,
It's a little number.
Yeah, just from a clarification, that's for documentation and secretary or memorializing the minutes is what that line item's used for. The board is not compensated. As Stephen indicated, 5-panel group, diverse.
okay, yep. Just wanted to make sure he could answer any questions that were thrown his way. All right, so I know that, Colin, I know you had some additional business that you might want to cover tonight. Is it okay if we start with that on the 20th? Can you remind me on the 20th what we're covering? Public Works. Okay.
So my question, what I want to highlight was for library,
Okay.
and I think Crystal is leaving January 5th, so that would suggest that Crystal would have to come back next week.
Okay. So are we going to get the questions to her prior?
I can write them up and send them to him, and if you don't want to go over them tonight, I can send them to everybody, if that's
That'd be great.
preferable.
Okay. All right, sounds
Just to
good.
let you know, I will not attend the 20th. I'm
Okay.
going to have to be at Lake Tahoe.
Luckily, there's a Zoom recording for you, Lou. Jay,
Thank you for fitting us in this evening. Appreciate it.
you got it. Any additional questions or any other business?
The only other thing is I was hoping, Lynn, you can get us the 10-year view of CIP and add on the master plan tracking sheet so that we have.
Probably haven't seen your email yet, but
Oh, good for you, okay. So that we have that data for purposes of reserves discussions.
Okay. Any motions to adjourn? So moved. Any seconds? Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.